Over the last few days, I've watched all 4 Cube movies, so now it's time to rank them. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one today. I'm the movie ranker, and today I'm going to be ranking all 4 Cube movies from worst to best. This is a pretty interesting franchise, kind of underrated, but also pretty low budget, so I can see why a lot of people haven't seen them. The first is regarded as a Canadian cult classic by this point, and it's pretty highly regarded in that aspect. We got a few sequels, we got a remake from Japan a few years ago, so I'm interested to discuss this with you guys and share my thoughts, but just make sure you drop your ranking down in the comment section. We'll have a great discussion. Tell me your favorite, your least favorite. Have you seen these movies? And also like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. Without wasting any more time, let's dive in. So for me, coming in the last place at number 4, I have to give it to Cube from 2021, the Japanese remake. It just feels so lifeless in this franchise. It pretty much follows the same beats as the original in terms of the rules of the cube, how they're all different colors, how they have prime numbers that you have to solve to figure out where the traps are. All that is very similar to the original, and I feel like they should have at least taken some chances, because it's just too similar at this point. I've seen it before, and this also affects the pacing. The first movie had great pacing for the type of movie it was, this more one location, but this, you really feel the runtime. It felt like a chore to get through, if I'm being honest. And the traps weren't all that creative either. This for being like 20 some years newer, this film, There is one trap I really liked where it's like this metal spike goes through people and then it branches out like a tree. That's pretty cool, but that's kind of the only standout trap for me, and other ones are just copying from the sequels or from the original. And yeah, it just feels bland. The characters all suck. You don't really know anything about them even by the end of the film. There's an old guy who, doesn't like the younger generations. There's a kid who hates adults. There's a girl. We never do really find out much about the girl until like the final 2 minutes of the film. You see what I mean? Not any good characters to latch onto or to care about. We don't got any good dialogue scenes between the characters to keep things interesting. We do get one character that's the most fleshed out character here, and he has like a tragic past where he lost his brother to suicide. He could have saved him, and it's all over his father being abusive, and he went through the same thing growing up. All that could have been really interesting, but the way it's dealt with and the way it's shown to the audience, it's through flashback scenes. It's really heavy-handed to you, and we don't learn any of this through interesting dialogue conversations like the original film was really good at. So yeah, shitty characters. Nothing real interesting when it comes to the traps except for one of them, and the rules to this is all too simple, and we've seen it before, so they never really got to show us anything new. So this just feels like a really lifeless adaptation of the original. Coming up next at number 3, I'm going with Cube 2 Hypercube. What a random friggin' sequel. Not what I was expecting. These were all first time watches aside from the original, guys, so yeah, this one is pretty bonkers. Instead of it being this movie about these rooms with these traps or whatnot, it's not about that at all. We don't really get much for traps in here. It's more about physics and stuff. Like some rooms have more or less gravity than others. Some rooms, the time is different. They're slow-mo, they're sped up. And all that's pretty interesting. Some rooms lead to portals, like lead to random other rooms. You could shut the door and end up somewhere else, All that is super interesting, especially when we start running into alternate versions of themselves in the cube. There's multiple versions. You got this one guy who starts killing, going crazy, kind of out of nowhere. It's due to his hunger or some shit, but anyway, he just kind of loses his sanity and starts killing off a bunch of Jerrys and that. And it's pretty cool how he starts wearing all the watches and wearing all the key cards and that on him, so you can see how many people he's killed when you run back into him. That's kind of interesting, but man, the graphics and the effects in here are so outdated, the worst in the entire franchise. We're getting like this weird like tesseract cube floating in the middle of the room, and it looks like something off a PlayStation 1 video game. It's god awful, and it kind of takes away from the tension and from everything. I lose my investment a little bit when you see how cheap the graphics are in this flick. The characters are pretty interesting. Enough anyway, maybe not as much as the original again, but you know, they're fairly good. We get like this old lady who has dementia, or she has a huge memory loss anyway, but we learn to find out that she worked for this main company, and Xeon or something like that, or Ezon, I think it's Ezon, the name of the company we find out who put on this cube. And we're slowly given a bit more information than the first film, which is nice, but they don't give us too much either, where it kind of ruins things. You got to keep things ambiguous somewhat. And they do a fairly good job at that. It's just the graphics in here. It lacks the thrills. Like, since we don't get the traps in that, it's not as thrilling or as engaging as perhaps as the first film. This one, it definitely has potential. Like, I like all the quantum physics and that about it. It's just the execution is a little piss poor in my opinion. But yeah, like I said, interesting characters with the old lady. You got like this video game programmer who made a video game similar to this, so that's perhaps why he's in there. And everybody in the cube seems to have a purpose or a connection to the Hypercube. Like I said, the old lady working for the company, the video game programmer. You got a hacker in here. I thought that was very dumb. There's a reveal later in the film that there's this younger girl that's blind in the cube, how she is like this mastermind hacker. I'm like, for one thing, how if she's blind? Or was she not blind in the past? I don't know. But I do like that she ran in the cube to escape because the company was going to have her offed or whatever. All that is very interesting. I feel like it's just the execution here kind of sucks. It gets a little confusing, a little too bizarre, and by the end, where the Hypercube's imploding, it is so goddamn cheap, man. Like I said, the graphics and the visuals are god awful in here. It's the movie you feel the budget the most, because they try to go big and they just couldn't. They were really restricted with what they had to work with, and you can feel that. But yeah, I enjoyed this movie enough. It's bad, that's for sure, but I'm a big fan of time travel and stuff like that, so this had a few things in there that did interest me, and that one dude who just went nuts and started killing everybody was pretty interesting as well, even though it's kind of copying off of things we've seen from the original flick. I think this one's still worth a watch if you're into this franchise, but be warned, it looks god awful, and it kind of goes above and beyond what it should for a Cube movie. Actually, I think one of the biggest mistakes this movie makes is not really having any rules, because then it's like, well, what's going on here? It all feels like we're not advancing in the plot. We're just wandering around until the movie kind of ends with weird shit happening, where we don't have like the numbers on the doors to go by. There's nothing to figure out, you know, so yeah, not a great film. Up next, at number 2, I'm going with Cube Zero, the third entry and supposedly a prequel. There's really nothing in this film that suggests it's a prequel. You could say it's a prequel, you could say it's a standalone. It doesn't really matter when you're watching this. Due to the ending, I feel like that's why a lot of people believe that this is a prequel. Maybe it is a prequel stated by the director, but like I said, there's no real connection there. There is a character that gets lobotomized at the end of this, and it ends up seeming like he has a mental condition, a disorder, like special needs. And I think a lot of people assume that that character is the same character in the original film, but he's not. Two different names, and the director even came out in the behind the scenes footage to say, like in interviews, that it is not the same character. And I look online, and 80% of the people out there think it's the same person, think it's Kazan from the first one, but this Win guy is a different character. Now that we get that out of the way, even though whether you take this as a prequel, sequel, whatever, this is still a pretty good movie. Like, I had fun with this one. you're on your third movie, so now it's about time you start expanding on the lore, the mythology, what's really going on, because there's only so many times we can go into this not knowing, and it's going to start feeling like the same thing over and over. So I do like that this movie gave us something different. We get to see the programmer side of things, people watching on the screens of the people in the cubes. We find out that there's watchers here and they have a job, but they're still not free people. They've never seen the outside world in a very long time, so they're stuck down here somewhere in a secluded area. They don't get to see their bosses. Their food is sent down to them in pill form, I might add, which adds to like the futuristic nature of this world. And I just like that we got to see the other side of the glass. You know what I mean? And we get this really cool story where one of the programmers ends up, his curiosity gets the best of him. He's starting to question what this company's really doing, and are these really prisoners who consented their lives to be in this cube, or is that all just a show and they're just putting whoever they want in this cube to suffer and die and run tests on or whatnot? That's all really thought provoking, and I really like that aspect of the film. And one of our programmers or watchers ends up going in to try to rescue this mother that he sees. And another interesting thing about this film is they erase all the memories of everybody in the cube, so they don't even know who they are, and they record their dreams like onto hard drives or discs or whatever. And that's where he learns that this girl is really a mother with a daughter, and he knows that she didn't give consent to go into there. So his job is to go in and rescue her. And I thought that was just a cool different side to the story we never seen before. And that's something you can add without giving too much away, because this world is still very mysterious, and this company, what's really going on, they don't give you too much, just enough to chew on. And I really like that. And this, like I said, this is the third film, so it's about time you have to start giving some information on what's going on, right? But yeah, the rooms were pretty cool. I like the traps. This one goes friggin' gory. The goriest entry out of all these. Um, Man, there's some cool things in there. The first kill right off the bat in the movie with this guy getting covered in what we think is water, and he thinks so too, and he starts drinking it and everything. You find out it's some type of like acid or something. It starts melting his skin off, and it's all gooey, and his insides and everything just start melting away, and it is probably the coolest thing in this franchise when it comes to the traps and the kills. So damn good. And we had a couple pretty cool gory kills in here, which, you know, I thought was just really cool. It's something, this came out in the era of like the Saw films and torture porn, so I was kind of expecting that, and you really feel that when you're watching. You're like, I can tell when this movie came out. I also really like how when needed, the company's able to shove needles through the floor to inject people that are in the cube, use acid to erase the numbers and clues, or it's not numbers in this one, it's letters to get into the, figure out which room has traps or not. Like they can erase those when they figure out like, we're going to get screwed here. We need to really screw up these people in the cube by ruining all their clues. I like that that's an option, and how they're all on camera. Like I said, just adds a lot of good things to this franchise. Especially how one of the people in the cube was a soldier, and he was microchipped. So when he dies, they take over the microchip and pretty much use him as a zombie, as their slave to go after the other ones. That was another cool aspect. The film's not perfect though. I think it suffers from bad characters again, much like the Japanese remake. There's not a lot to them, or they're annoying or whatnot. The only character you kind of care about is the programmer himself, who goes in to rescue the girl. The mother, she's interesting too, but I just find the actress is just really bad in here. Her acting skills is not good, and it kind of hurts her character just a little bit for me. But yeah, the Win character, the guy who goes in to rescue her, is definitely the standout here. He definitely has good values and morals, and you're just really hoping this character can succeed, not only for his sake, but for the mother's sake, and hopefully she can reunite with her daughter. And as I said at the starting of this part, how at the very end he gets lobotomized, he gets caught and put in the cube himself. I like how that kind of showed us how Kazan ended up the way he was in the original film. Again, two separate different characters, but they end up in the same shape. They almost feel like they're special needs or this extreme autistic character or whatnot. So yeah, I really like that whole tie-in and everything. So a really good sequel. It still has problems. It's the characters kind of all suck aside from the couple main ones. Um, our villain, like the bosses, end up coming down to see the Watchers at one point, the programmers, and they're all in suits and that. And one of them is just so ridiculous. The head guy, he has like this fake eye, and that just was a little too goofy. So the tone is a little off at times in this film. And the characters could have been written a lot better and be a little bit more interesting. But aside from that, everything else is a huge step up for this franchise. We got great traps, great gore, an interesting story, one of the best premises in here. And yeah, it just gave us more of what we needed when we're at the third entry now in this franchise. So, Cube Zero, I kind of enjoyed this one. But for me, easily coming in the first place is the cult classic Cube from 1997. Canadian film, I'm proud to say. And this one, it had such a small budget, but it does so much with the little it has. And a big reason why this movie works is its brilliant dialogue. The script was so strong because the acting is still very hit or miss since this was lower budget. The movie takes place in these rooms that all look identical aside from the color, so it probably didn't cost them a whole lot for the set pieces. But again, you're never bored. It's always interesting. The characters are all really interesting and engaging. They all are different pieces to this puzzle, really. We got a cop, we got a doctor, we got an escape artist, we got someone who's mentally unstable, special needs, but he's really good with numbers, which is what they need to survive. So all of them possess qualities that they could use together to get out of here and escape. And they don't realize that for the most part. So that's what gets them in trouble and a lot of them killed throughout, and how different ones, their egos get to them. The police officer, for instance, is really interesting because at the start he seems like our true good character. And he's a cop. He should be there to serve and protect. But we really get to see he's not one of the good cops. He's just wearing a mask at the start. And as the film goes on, his mask starts to fade. And we get to see what really piece of shit cop he really is. And how he was a terrible father, abusive husband, all these different things. And he starts losing control of the group. And that's really, really starts to snap and become unhinged. And basically, you can't trust him anymore. He loses all trust, right? And all the other characters don't really want to be around him, but he is definitely the biggest and the most ruthless out of them. So he definitely brings that crazy factor to the story. But yeah, like I said, it's just interesting where all these characters come from and how they're all useful if they just realize it. The fact that they have to use these prime numbers, and it's all these different clues and puzzles to get out of here is super interesting as well, especially this being the first entry. You don't really sure how things are going to play out, and just from how they use their boot on a string to shoot in the rooms to see if there's a trap in there, super interesting. The traps themselves, for this being low budget, work. Sometimes it's like a flamethrower, sometimes it's these metal wires that come in and cube up everybody, no pun intended. But yeah, all that is just super interesting. The characters are really strong. So is the dialogue. The acting is, hit or miss, but you kind of forget that because the story is just so engaging. I like that you never really know what's going on within the cube, like who's putting this on and what's the goal. There's a lot of theories thrown around there by the characters and conspiracies and everything, and that is all super engaging and interesting as well. Keeps your attention and keeps you guessing and makes the movie really thought-provoking, all the way to the very end, to the final frame where we see the exit and the light shining in, and you don't really get to see what's on the other side of that light. It makes you think, wow, perhaps this is purgatory and that's heaven. They finally made it out. It's just really thought-provoking, and that's what this movie uses best. I mean, it's like I said, it's not really super high budget or this big blockbuster full of action, but it keeps you engaged, and that's the main thing. So to me, this movie easily comes in the first place, and I'm sure it inspired and influenced countless movies, especially like Escape Room or even Saw when it comes to the traps and whatnot. So yeah, Cube from 1997 comes in the first place in my ranking. So there you have it, guys. There's my ranking of all 4 Cube movies. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't seen these films, watch the 4 of them at your own risk, but definitely go into the first one and see how you think, what you think. If you enjoy the first one, definitely continue if you like this type of movie, but if the first one wasn't your thing, definitely don't continue because it's only going to get worse. I hope you guys enjoyed that. You can follow me on Letterboxd and Instagram. Links to those are always in the description of my video. Like, subscribe, you know the drill by now. And I will return with more franchises. But until next time, thanks for watching.